If you sign that paper, you'll be dead by morning. The boardroom froze. 23 executives stopped breathing. The billionaire's pen hovered mid-air as the cleaning lady's whispered warning shattered the silence like a gunshot. No one moved. No one dared. Then James Reynolds, the man worth $47 billion, who commanded respect with just a glance, slowly set his Mont Blanc pen down and looked into the eyes of the woman who had just threatened him in front of his entire executive team. "Explain yourself," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Now." Blood roared in Maria Gonzalez's ears as security guards moved toward her. She had seconds before they dragged her away. Seconds to save not just Reynolds' fortune, but possibly his life. "Not literal death, sir," she stammered, her accent thickening with fear. "Corporate death. Financial death. Page 43, paragraph 6 contains a poison pill. Sign it, and by tomorrow morning, Victor Lang will own controlling interest in everything you've built." The room erupted. The CFO lunged for the contract. Security hesitated, unsure whether to remove the cleaning lady or protect their boss from the sudden chaos. "Enough!" Reynolds' voice cut through the pandemonium like a blade. "Everyone out. Except you." He pointed at Maria. "And you." His finger swung to Richard Harrington, the CFO whose face had turned the color of spoiled milk. As the boardroom emptied, Reynolds picked up the 517-page contract with hands that had negotiated billion-dollar deals across 5 continents. "Show me," he commanded. Maria's trembling finger pointed to paragraph 6, innocuous-looking text buried beneath legal jargon about transitional equity restructuring. Reynolds read it once, then again, his expression darkening with each word. "This transfers voting rights to a holding company during the transition period," he said slowly. "Yes," Maria whispered, "but the transition period is defined on page 216 as no less than 5 years. And the holding company." She flipped to the appendix, pointing to a corporation name and address in microscopic print. "This shell company is owned by Victor Lang." Reynolds' head snapped up, eyes boring into his CFO with such fury that Harrington took an involuntary step backward. "How long?" Reynolds asked, his voice barely audible. "How long have you been Lang's puppet?" "James, this is absurd." Harrington laughed nervously. "You're taking the word of a cleaning lady over your CFO of 15 years? She's obviously confused, probably doesn't even understand." "The address," Maria interrupted, her voice stronger now. "It's the same offshore entity that appears in the documents you shredded last week. The ones you didn't know I had to reassemble for the custodial records audit." Harrington's face contorted from dismissive to horrified in an instant. He lunged for the door, but security was faster. The sickening crunch of his nose breaking against the marble floor echoed through the room as they tackled him. "Call the FBI," Reynolds ordered, his gaze never leaving the woman who had just saved his empire. "We have evidence of corporate espionage at the highest level." As Harrington was dragged away, blood streaming down his designer suit, Reynolds studied Maria with new eyes. "You reassembled shredded documents?" "I have a photographic memory, sir," she said simply, "and a daughter in law school. I recognize legal traps because I study her textbooks at night." Reynolds nodded slowly, a decision forming behind his eyes. "What's your name?" "Maria Gonzalez, sir." "Well, Maria Gonzalez, how would you like to head my new corporate security division starting tomorrow?" He extended his hand, a gesture he'd never before offered to any employee below executive level. "I need someone who sees what others miss, who can't be bought, and who isn't afraid to speak truth to power, even when that power signs your paycheck." As Maria's calloused hand met his manicured one, neither could have predicted that within 5 years, the Gonzalez Protocol would become the gold standard in corporate security, saving 4 Fortune 500 companies from similar takeover attempts. Or that the cleaning lady from Venezuela would become the most feared corporate fraud investigator in America, with a corner office just 2 doors down from Reynolds himself. But in that moment, as security led Harrington away in handcuffs and executives pressed their ears against the boardroom door, all that mattered was the hidden clause that nearly toppled an empire, and the invisible woman who refused to remain silent. The document that should have ended Reynolds Industries instead ended Harrington's career and launched Maria's. By nightfall, the FBI would uncover offshore accounts containing $37 million in bribes. By the end of the week, Victor Lang would be fighting extradition from the Cayman Islands. And the cleaning lady who noticed what an entire legal team missed? She would never push a custodial card again. He was like a son to me. James Reynolds' voice cracked as he stared through the one-way glass at Richard Harrington, the man he'd mentored for 15 years, now sitting handcuffed in an FBI interrogation room. 3 days had passed since Maria Gonzalez had stopped Reynolds from signing away his company. 3 days of forensic accountants swarming through Reynolds Industries books. 3 days of shocking revelations that left even hardened federal agents speechless. "I paid for his wedding," Reynolds continued, his normally commanding voice reduced to a hollow whisper. "I was godfather to his children." Maria stood silently beside him, still uncomfortable in her new designer suit, still adjusting to being suddenly thrust from the shadows into the glaring spotlight of corporate power. The ID badge around her neck, Maria Gonzalez, Director of Corporate Security, felt like it belonged to someone else. "Show her," Reynolds ordered the FBI agent who had been briefing them. Agent Daniels hesitated. "Sir, this information is—" "Show her everything," Reynolds interrupted. "She's the only reason we're not all being interviewed by bankruptcy trustees right now." The agent nodded and opened a file marked confidential. Inside were photographs that turned Maria's blood to ice. Richard Harrington embracing Victor Lang on a yacht in Monaco. Richard Harrington accepting a briefcase from Lang's security chief in an underground parking garage. Richard Harrington entering the private Zurich bank where $37 million in bribe money now sat frozen by international authorities. But the last photo was the most damning. Harrington seated at Lang's private dinner table. 5 years ago, long before the merger talks had even begun. This wasn't opportunistic betrayal. This was calculated infiltration. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity, Agent Daniels explained. Harrington spent years becoming indispensable to you, gaining your absolute trust. Meanwhile, he was systematically weakening the company's defenses from within. "The server upgrade delays," Maria said suddenly, pieces clicking into place. "The cybersecurity budget cuts. The high turnover in the legal department." Reynolds looked at her sharply. "How do you know about those?" "People talk around the cleaning staff, sir. We're invisible." She pointed to the records. All those decisions came from Harrington's office. He was creating vulnerabilities for Lang to exploit. The FBI agent nodded. "We found evidence that Harrington sabotaged 3 potential acquisitions that would have strengthened Reynolds Industries against takeover. He installed backdoors in your security systems. And he systematically pushed out anyone who might have caught onto the scheme. Like Marcus Jenkins," Maria said quietly. Reynolds stiffened. "My former chief counsel? He resigned last year to spend time with family." "He was fired," Maria corrected gently, "after he questioned contract language in the Singapore deal, language very similar to what I found on page 43. "How do you know this?" Reynolds demanded. "Mr. Jenkins was kind to the custodial staff. He told me the truth on his last day, while I helped him pack his office. He said something was wrong at Reynolds, but he couldn't prove it. He made me memorize his personal email, told me to contact him if I ever saw something suspicious." She looked down. "I sent him a message this morning." Reynolds turned back to the glass, studying his former friend with new understanding. "So it wasn't just about money. This was personal for Lang. He wanted to destroy me." "It appears so," Agent Daniels confirmed. "We found communications suggesting Lang has held a grudge since you outbid him for Westcorp in 2018. He told Harrington, and I quote, 'I don't want to buy Reynolds Industries. I want to watch Reynolds lose everything, then offer him a job as my janitor.'" Maria flinched at the casual cruelty, the disdain for honest work. The intercom crackled as the interrogation resumed inside. They watched as Harrington, once impeccably groomed, now unshaven and hollow-eyed, leaned forward. "James doesn't understand what's coming," Harrington told the interrogator. a desperate edge to his voice. Lang has people everywhere, not just in Reynolds Industries, in the banks, in the regulatory agencies, even in... He stopped, eyes darting to the mirror as if he could see them watching. Even in what, Mr. Harrington? The interrogator pressed. Harrington's shoulders slumped. It doesn't matter now. Lang will know I talked. I'm already dead. A chill ran through the observation room. We need to offer him witness protection, Agent Daniels said quietly. This goes beyond corporate espionage. Reynolds turned to Maria, his face hardened by betrayal. You recognized what was happening because you've seen it before, haven't you? This kind of systematic corruption. Maria nodded slowly. In Venezuela, before we fled, my husband exposed government officials who were stealing from the treasury. They destroyed him, planted evidence, froze our accounts, threatened our daughter. We escaped with nothing but our lives. Her eyes met Reynolds. The pattern is always the same, sir. The powerful using paperwork and procedure to steal what they cannot earn. And the warning signs are always there, Reynolds said, understanding dawning. If you know where to look. Yes, the small inconsistencies, the convenient resignations, the explanations that answer questions no one asked. She gestured to Harrington behind the glass. And always, there is someone trusted who opens the door to the thieves. Reynolds was silent for a long moment, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. Then he straightened, decision made. Agent Daniels, my company will cooperate fully with your investigation. Maria, I want a complete security overhaul, personnel, systems, everything. No one is above scrutiny. He turned to leave, then paused. And call Marcus Jenkins. Offer him his old job back, with a promotion and my personal apology. As they walked out of the federal building, Reynolds stopped at the security desk. The guard looked up, surprised to see one of America's wealthiest men standing before him. Sir. Reynolds gestured to the cleaning woman mopping the lobby floor, ignored by everyone passing through. What's her name? The guard blinked. Esther, I think? Reynolds nodded and approached the woman, who looked up in surprise. Esther, he said, extending his hand. James Reynolds. I just wanted to thank you for the work you do. The woman's shock was evident as she hesitantly shook his hand. As Reynolds and Maria walked away, he spoke quietly. I've been walking past people like you for 30 years without seeing them. That changes today. Maria smiled slightly. It's a start, sir. What neither of them knew was that within the hour, Victor Lang would receive a phone call informing him of Harrington's cooperation with authorities. By nightfall, Lang would be on his private jet, destination unknown. And the betrayal that was meant to destroy Reynolds Industries would instead transform it, beginning with a new corporate policy requiring that every executive, from the CEO down, spend one day each quarter working alongside the custodial staff. The invisible would become visible, and the company would be stronger for it. But as Maria and Reynolds drove back to the corporate headquarters, neither suspected that the most shocking revelation was yet to come, or that Lang's web of corruption stretched further than either of them could imagine. 6 months after stopping the fraudulent merger, Maria Gonzalez stood frozen in the doorway of her new office on the 86th floor of Reynolds Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city where she had once scrubbed toilets for minimum wage. The marble desk, larger than her former apartment's entire kitchen, gleamed in the morning light. Is something wrong with it? James Reynolds asked, watching her hesitation with curiosity. Maria's hand unconsciously touched the small gold nameplate on the door. Maria Gonzalez, Executive Vice President of Corporate Integrity. No, sir, she said quietly. I'm just remembering the last time I was in this office. I was emptying the trash for Mr. Harrington. Reynolds nodded, understanding flickering across his face. And now you're taking his place. Poetic justice. Not justice, Maria corrected him gently. Opportunity. There's a difference. The transformation of Maria Gonzalez from cleaning lady to executive had become legend within Reynolds Industries and beyond. Business magazines clamored for interviews. Harvard Business Review had published a case study. #TheCleaningLady trended on social media for weeks. But few knew the full story of what happened after that fateful boardroom confrontation. 3 weeks after Maria had stopped Reynolds from signing the poisoned contract, Victor Lang was found dead on his yacht in international waters. Apparent suicide, though rumors swirled of Russian investors displeased with losing their investment in the failed takeover. The FBI investigation had uncovered corruption that spanned continents. 5 Reynolds executives were indicted. 2 regulatory officials were convicted of accepting bribes. A network of corporate espionage that had operated in the shadows for decades was dragged into the light. And at the center of it all stood Maria Gonzalez, the invisible woman who had seen everything. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, Reynolds said, checking his watch. "Are you ready?" Maria straightened her designer jacket, still uncomfortable in clothes that cost more than 6 months of her former salary. "Yes, sir." "Stop calling me sir," Reynolds said, not unkindly. "We're partners now." As they walked toward the boardroom, employees parted like the Red Sea, whispers following in their wake. The unlikely duo, the billionaire and the former cleaning lady, had become the most powerful alliance in corporate America. The new board of directors waited in the same room where Maria had first spoken up 6 months earlier. The table was the same. The executives were not. Half of the faces were new, personally vetted by Maria herself. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reynolds began once they were seated. "Today marks the official launch of the Gonzalez Protocol." Screens around the room illuminated, displaying the corporate integrity system that would soon become industry standard. A system that empowered employees at every level to report suspicious activities through anonymous channels. A system that required executives to work alongside frontline staff quarterly. A system designed to ensure that no one remained invisible or unaccountable. "Ms. Gonzalez will now present the final version for approval," Reynolds continued, taking his seat. Maria stood, her nervousness hidden behind carefully practiced poise. 6 months of intensive executive training, corporate law seminars, and public speaking coaches had prepared her for this moment. "The Gonzalez Protocol is built on a simple premise," she began, her accent still present but no longer apologized for. "That security comes from visibility, that integrity requires accountability, and that the best insights often come from unexpected sources." As she walked the board through the details of the program, Maria caught Reynolds watching her with unmistakable pride. The man who had built an empire on cutthroat business tactics was now rebuilding it on transparency and integrity, with a former cleaning lady as his right hand. When the presentation concluded, the vote was unanimous. The Gonzalez Protocol would become corporate policy, effective immediately. "There's one more item on today's agenda," Reynolds said as the applause died down. He slid a document across the table to Maria. "This requires your signature." Maria looked down at the papers, her photographic memory immediately processing the legal language. Her breath caught. "This is a partnership agreement," she said, looking up in shock. 10% ownership of Reynolds Industries. Reynolds nodded. Valued at approximately $4.7 billion as of this morning's market open. The board members murmured in surprise. This hadn't been mentioned in the agenda. "I don't understand," Maria said, her carefully constructed executive facade cracking slightly. "You saved this company," Reynolds said simply. "More than that, you've transformed it. This isn't charity, Maria. It's fair compensation for extraordinary service." Maria's hands trembled as she reached for the pen. The same Mont Blanc that Reynolds had nearly used to sign away his company half a year earlier. "Before you sign," Reynolds continued, "there's someone here who might want to witness this moment." The boardroom doors opened, and Maria's 22-year-old daughter Elena entered, followed by a distinguished man Maria recognized immediately. "Marcus Jenkins," she breathed, rising to greet her old friend. Now reinstated as chief counsel with a public apology and substantial compensation package. "Hello, Maria," Jenkins smiled. "Or should I say, Madam Executive?" Elena rushed forward, embracing her mother. "Mama, is it true? Are we really billionaires now?" Maria looked from her daughter to Reynolds, then down at the partnership agreement. "We are something better than billionaires, Mija," she said softly. "We are visible." As Maria signed the document that would forever change her family's trajectory, Reynolds addressed the board one final time. Today marks a new chapter for Reynolds Industries, one where we recognize that true security doesn't come from corner offices or exclusive access. It comes from creating a culture where everyone, from the CEO to the newest cleaning staff, feels responsible for our collective success. He turned to Maria, extending his hand. "Welcome to the partnership, Ms. Gonzalez." As their hands met, cameras flashed, capturing the moment that would appear on the cover of Fortune magazine the following week, under the headline, "The Cleaning Lady Who Became a Billionaire. How Maria Gonzalez Saved Reynolds Industries and Reinvented Corporate Security." What the headline wouldn't capture was the true transformation, not just of Maria's bank account, but of an entire corporate culture. Within 2 years, companies around the world would adopt versions of the Gonzalez Protocol. Employee whistleblowers would be celebrated rather than ostracized. And the cleaning staff at Reynolds Tower would receive the highest wages and best benefits package in the industry. As the board meeting concluded, Maria stood at the window of her new office, looking down at the city where she had arrived 20 years earlier with nothing but hope and determination. "Mama," Elena said, joining her at the window, "did you ever imagine this was possible?" Maria smiled, thinking of the night classes, the legal textbooks studied by flashlight, the 1,000 indignities endured while remaining alert, observant, ready. "I always knew opportunity would come, Mija," she said, putting an arm around her daughter. "I just had to be awake enough to see it, and brave enough to speak." Below them, invisible from this height, a cleaning crew moved through the streets, preparing the city for another day. Maria made a silent promise to ensure they would all have the chance to be seen. After all, you never know when the next whisper might change everything.